Hello, happy Mashramani. In this video I'm going to be taking you through the good, the bad, and the ugly bits of Mashramani 2017. So what did I think were the good bits? I'm going to start with that. I think the vendors were a little more organized in terms of they had them in a sort of grid layout. Now I don't want to say too much here because there's also some element to the vendors that I put in the bad category with regard to changing the route, but we're looking at the good, right? So it seemed a little more organized in that regard. A lot of people came out by the afternoon, despite a really stormy start to the day where there was a bit of flooding. The people in the floats, I think they were looking pretty lively. Not all of them, but right, there was some good back and all going on. People seemed to be enjoying themselves. The little children especially that came out, they had a really good time. So that may wrap it up for the good bit segment. Yeah, that and this little bit of video that I'm going to play here. Then we could talk about the bad bits, right? What I'm trying to avoid here is the accusation that I only see through one lens, right? Some people think I'm just critical of Guyana, when in fact I try and analyze what I'm looking at, and there are multiple layers or multiple ways in which we could see different situations. So I mean, I just tried to look at some of the good things that I saw. I saw some smiling faces, friends out, families that were out. I didn't really see the sort of diversity that our 6 races or 6 nations, 6 peoples. I didn't see the sort of diversity that Guyana is so famous for. I didn't really see that diversity of people out there, and I don't think it's because any group of people were disinvited, but this is just something that I think is something that continues to sadden me about Guyana, the sort of ethnic centralizations to not only festivals but also different events that we have. And I wish the sort of solidarity that we see around something like the movement against parking meters, which is looking to enslave Guyanese for the next 9 to 8 years in a really crooked contract. I wish I saw this sort of diversity that's obvious and present there in gatherings like this. But maybe people assume that because the coalition are in government, so more Afro-Guyanese should go out to festivals. It's because it's a coalition Mashramani, or when the PPP is in festival, like, is it more Indian people like, oh, we should go to Mashramani? Because even though I think it always seems like a more Afro-Guyanese dominated festival. I want to say as well that this year the route felt much safer, and I think that probably had to do with they had a greater amount of security. I've personally seen people get robbed and beaten up at Mashramani in the past, and if you ever want to avoid getting robbed at Mashramani, the most common way I've ever seen people get mugged is like a group of guys will like start walking around you and trying to close into you. If you feel anyone closing into you, just give them the elbow. So or have a spotter, have someone walking with you slightly behind you that could spot, if someone's trying to close in on you and mug you. But that was something that was good about it. I'm trying to think here, right? The place looked cleaner the next day, even though I think there was still too much rubbish left around inside the main stadium area. The place looked a bit cleaner. That's something that I think has been evident since the change of government. Now, we'll comment on whether or not this particular project, the stadium we all went to go celebrate Mashramani in, whether it's something that's corrupt or not, whether it's something that we need any more answers on, but that's coming up later. So here's some more footage. Bad bits of Mashramani 2017 for me were number one. Well, I want to say the next two are going to be 1 and 1.1, but the first thing for me was seeing so many children having a sort of gambling 101 introduction at a public event, a family-oriented event, and having seen for myself the number of people that are attracted to the gambling dens around the city. And now we have this, I think, sport bet or something of the sort. We have betting shops now and make it more easy for young people to gamble. And I this is something I'm going to cover later, I guess, in more detail. But I see a disturbing trend, and if it's not at the bus park, at events like this, I really see where young boys are introduced and socialized to this sort of behavior. So yeah, something to keep our eye on as a nation. I don't know that we've really drawn the line between amusement, fairground, playground rides and the like, and serious adult-oriented types of amusement. If people call losing your money fun, but I think for a young, immature mind, I don't know. You can share your thoughts with me on that one. The other thing that was bad is Georgetown suffered a bout of severe flooding because of some torrential downpours that seemed to appear out of nowhere the day before Mashramani, almost as if Guyana was crying. You could see evidence of years of neglect to our central drainage system, and I don't know if this has been empirically proven, but perhaps the effect of climate change over time. Now, given that the water goes down a bit fast in some areas, we still suffer from severe flooding, and I guess it remains to be seen what the flood prevention strategy is. Joshua is draining a bit faster, but this is a problem that seems to be ahead of the people trying to solve it. The other bad thing I want to talk about is the utilization of the grounds and the actual event itself. Now, I've lived outside of Guyana for a few years, so I haven't gone to every single mash for every Mashramani of my life, but I have gone to quite a few Mashramanis, and I guess it's different for children, but for me, it's like seeing the same thing over and over again. You get some floats, you march them down the road, they go round in a ring, and they exit. Now, that could be a model that is used or utilized to improve upon year on year. Like, there are loads of technologies that we could be utilizing, but I really don't see this happening. It's sort of it's a laid back, I even want to say lazy approach to this whole thing, where people are like, oh, mash again, let's just get out the playbook from last year that we used since 1974, and people are gonna line up and enjoy it. Of course, we come out because they're very limited options for entertainment for many Guyanese. So people come out and they bring their children out and they try and enjoy it. And it's nice, the floats are colorful, but there must be some way to inject originality into this process. The next thing is that they follow the same pattern, but they I'm just gonna leave that. There's a cow. But what they basically did was follow the same pattern they've used for donkey's years, but they made it slightly worse. Now, I want to provide some context there, because I think the planning this year was much better than last year, with specific regard to how they utilized the space inside of this temporary wooden coliseum that they built, right? The brown elephant. Now, last year you'd see the flute come straight down the middle, and the sound was basically lost. There was competing sound systems down the road that were overpowering even the floats, trying to get the energy communicated to the crowd. And carnival, mass festivals, parties are about energy. They're about communicating energy. And the great thing about the national park was that it was a much more intimate setting for the sort of carnival that we have. Now, if anything, what we should really be taking stock of is how much investment we've really been making in creative industries. I think that the grounds can be utilized much better in the future if we must use that space. I still really don't see any problem with the old Mashramani route. The vendors, it seemed there was an effort to organize the vendors in a better way, a more efficient way, and perhaps limit the amount of waste generated, because there used to be some epic rubbish generated after Mashramani in the past, and that would leave the entire route littered with garbage. So I can understand that being one motivation, but I would also invite them to see that during celebrations there were no bins around. Like, even this Mashramani, I walked around looking for a bin to throw my rubbish in, and you had to be inside the stadium itself, but outside in the 76-3 monument area, the Square of the Revolution, there were hardly any bins. I want to say there were no bins. So it used to be the same on the Mashramani route before, and there were no bins for people to put their rubbish in, and there was no cleanup crew. You need a cleanup crew for any festival or event if they start. You need a cleanup crew that is active during and after the festival finishes. So while it's going on, there are people going around collecting rubbish. Right? You can also have little wardens if you want to find people. Tell them beforehand, yo, we're gonna be finding people at this Mashramani. Raise the money to pay the people that are gonna be going around picking up litter. Put bins there. It seems pretty simple to me, but no need to necessarily change the route, because there are a lot of people I say, the small man that depend on Mashramani to make money in the year, just like kite makers really look forward to Easter. There are a lot of vendors that typically would look forward to Mashramani, and I guess a lot of them are feeling like it was killed. I'm just gonna leave that. There's a cow. There were no packed stands that I could see, and especially towards the back, you could see a sort of scattering of people, which once again demolishes the excuse that we really need somewhere with so much capacity. That's why that place literally had to be built, and they couldn't do something like upgrade the national park and put screens so people could see the processions last year. Imagine we spent over $1 billion in a year just to do that. So I guess these are my reflections on Mashramani and Guyana in general. We're celebrating, but sometimes I just pause for thought and ask what exactly we are celebrating. Well, let's look at the ugly bits. So what we're looking at here is actually $1.2 billion and counting worth of investment, money that's been basically sunk into this project. I say and counting because we don't really know yet how much it's going to cost. It was never properly costed, and there are just so many questions surrounding this project. We don't even know if all the contractors have been paid yet. The last I read about their plight was that all the contractors still were owed millions of dollars, and this is even after hundreds of millions of dollars were spent on it. So I know a lot of people went out and they enjoyed the Mashramani, and certain things like public holidays attract a lot of criticism if you go criticize them. But I really can't help it. I'm sharing this video because this is what I experienced, I guess, with my eyes. And I was really shocked. I was really shocked that a year on, after completing this temporary structure, we were all told it was a temporary structure. I mean, a year on, you're seeing the state-run newspaper, The Chronicle, publishing articles where they're saying things like newly completed. I get really disturbed when you see that sort of bait and switch operation. But just look at this place. This is why I put it in the ugly section. The car park that was supposed to be realized, the stadium. I still can't even call this a proper stadium, if not a wooden coliseum. All that we're missing is some lions and gladiators. So what we have here is a stadium that's not completed. It can't by any measure be considered a proper stadium. There are a series of wooden bleachers, right? If we were just to take the shine off of everything for a second and stop being euphemistic, but we've got some hastily constructed wooden bleachers that we were told were temporary, but now are apparently permanent, which means all the drain work that's just been left incomplete, that people are still asking to be paid for, just gonna be left. I guess that's permanent now as well. And the gardens at the back, there are no gardens. All this land that we paid to clear is now going to become overgrown once more with bush and shrubs and trees. And in fact, only because of this this coming celebration here, Mashramani, was an effort made to clear up the land rather hastily, like the drains around the Durban Park project. But once again, once you clear the bush, it only reveals something horrific, which is that a lot of money has been wasted. So I'm rather surprised that there's been no commission of inquiry into this particular stain on our I've got to say our collective conscience, because I don't know how we could stay silent about things like this. people were really pissed off with the PPP and the way that they spent taxpayer money, the way that they went around fundraising, taking loans out in our name, and putting us in debt to then turn out substandard projects. But you gotta call a spade a spade. This is very, very substandard. I don't know if we get much more substandard than this, but yeah, this is sort of what they've foisted on the people. And having come into office rather, in a climate, I have to say, within the mental construct where people became accustomed, even though the place is much cleaner now, under the last administration, I think things got just pretty much filthy at one point, right? And you could see loads of videos on this channel to evidence that claim, but it really affected the mentality. So I think there are a lot of young people, especially that have grown up in the last decade, that they don't have an idea of what something with a proper standard looks like. But by golly, the stadium that they built in Providence, even though it can't, I don't think, stand up to international standards in terms of the build quality, it's a whole lot better than this. And they still cannot justify why we spent $1.2 billion on this project. And that's why, for me, this is ugly and obscene. So this is the second time Durban Park is in use. Hatfield Street used to flood before. They built these drains, but they didn't complete any of them. So Hatfield Street still floods, but with broken up half-completed drains. This is the car park. Tell me why there's not a commissioner inquiry into this. More than $1 billion. Whoa! I tell you, substandard. There you go. These are the car park areas where people are meant to park their vehicles. Small smattering of people there in the stands. But this is literally how the coalition spent $1.2 billion. These guys don't have any alleviation to their flood situation. And this is just a monstrosity. And we fly the flag over it. I seen the Chronicle now saying this is newly completed. That's a quote from the newspaper.